Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show how to secure your API gateway endpoint using Lambda Authorizer. There are two ways you can secure your endpoints in AWS. One is using the Lambda Authorizer, the other one using Cognito Authorizer. But however, this video more focusing on Lambda Authorizer. However, if you are interested with the Cognito Authorizer, you can find the link below in the description. All the code I'm going to use in this video will be in a GitHub. As usual, if you like my video and content, please subscribe my channel. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Let's get in. First, let's have a look what we are going to achieve in this video using a diagram to better understanding. We have a user is trying to access API gateway endpoint. As you can see, we do have a get endpoint called user. Behind the API gateway, there's a Lambda, which is doing some work. It could be any business logic, or it could be a DynamoDB table. So far it is working, but the problem here it is any user in the internet are able to access our API gateway endpoint, which is a get user endpoint. Right now it's time to implement or secure our API gateway endpoint. There's something called authorizer in the AWS API gateway. I will show in a bit what is authorizer in the AWS console with a demo. In the theory, there are mainly two authorizers. One is a Lambda authorizer, other one is a Cognito authorizer. What actually this authorizer do? With the authorizer, when the user is trying to access API gateway endpoint, the request is validated by the authorizer. It could be, as I mentioned, Lambda or the Cognito. If the user has a necessary permission, then the user is able to access the resources. In this case, it could be a Lambda or it could be a DynamoDB table. If the user doesn't have permission, the request is terminated. It doesn't go through to these resources. The request is terminated and the user will get the 403 status HTTP response. This Lambda authorizer is a custom code, of course. You can integrate with any identity provider, or you can use your own logic to validate or validate your user. In this video, I'm going to show how do we use Lambda authorizer to secure our endpoint. Soon after, there's another video to show Cognito authorizer. You can find in the description below, which show how to use Cognito authorizer to secure our endpoint. In summary, so we're going to implement Lambda authorizer to secure our endpoint step by step. So I'm in the AWS console. What I'm going to do, let's create an API gateway endpoint, which is a get user, and behind the API gateway, I'm going to create a Lambda. This Lambda is very simple and which simply return a string. Then we add a Lambda authorizer to secure our get user endpoint, as we discussed. Click on the API gateway, or this is something I already access API gateway, that it's coming to this screen. Otherwise, you can type in this search screen API gateway. Right, currently I do have a one API gateway. So if you don't have any API gateway, it's come with the welcome screen. So if you get a screen, you should see the create API, or otherwise you can click on the API and click on this create API endpoint. So when you try to create API gateway, it's come with some option. The first option is a HTTP API, which is a bit of old, and the socket is the one that if you want to do some kind of chat application, keep it the connection live. This is where you are using the WebSocket. The REST API, the one that I'm going to create. It has a private and public. The private in basically you can use within your VPC. This one you can expose to your public users. So I'm going to create a REST API. Select this REST API, the public one. I'm going to create a build. And yeah, it says new API REST, a new API. What I'm going to do, I'm going to give a name, my API. You can give a description. As an endpoint type, I'm keeping it a default. this is something either you can use edge optimize. This is more related to the performance. If you need more performance, you can use edge optimize, and the private if you want to keep it in your VPC. I'm click on the create API. Right, so once I click create API, you can see the API is selected as my API, the one that I gave, and currently we don't have any resources. The first thing is I'm gonna create a new resource. So as we agreed, and what we're gonna do, our resources is users, resource name, and give it a path, and click on the create resource. Then after that we need to create a method. So this is a get endpoint. What I'm going to do, click on the user, click on the create method, select the get endpoint. Either you can use different verbs, but in this case we are going to create a get endpoint. Click on that. So this will come up with some skeleton. So in this case what we're going to do, you can select the integration type as a Lambda function. As I mentioned, behind the API gateway you can use some HTTP, your custom HTTP API. You can use some mock AWS services. For example, you can use some this message integrate with the SQS and other AWS services, or VPC link. I'm not sure what is actually a VPC link, but this case what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a Lambda function behind the API gateway. Currently I don't have I haven't created a Lambda function, so therefore I need to go back to Lambda. So I'm going to create a Lambda in a new tab. I'll keep this tab open. What I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate the tab and go to Lambda, click on the Lambda, and I'm going to create a new function. So this function I call it as API Lambda, and you can use Node.js. This is the latest Node.js 18th version. I've used the same one. What I'm going to do, I'm create a default role. That's fine, you don't need to keep the roles, and click on the create function. It takes a few seconds based on, because it need to create a role and configure the role with the Lambda. Right, so our Lambda got created. As you can see, this is a bare minimum code for the initial Lambda. Currently it has handler, and it's returning the response with the 200 with this hello world. That's all I do. What I'm going to do, I'm going to add console.log. I'm gonna log the event, so then we can see in the CloudWatch what's the event look like. Right, so we create the Lambda. What we can do, I'm copy this name and go back to my API gateway, the one that I was creating, the other tab, and put the name over here. So what you can say, provide a Lambda function name or alias. You can just give it the name, should be okay, because Lambda, my Lambda is in the same region where the API gateway sits. And simply I select the Lambda function and select the region. It's automatically select, and I get the function name and click on save. What it's asking, okay, it's asking to add some permission. Basically what need to do, API gateway need to call the Lambda, so therefore it needs some permission. Invoke the Lambda, it needs some permission. So I'm click on okay, I'm agree. Right, so we got the endpoint. So basically at this moment we got the API gateway with the resource users, and the verb is get, and which call our simple Lambda, and which is fine. So we can do some testing. So how do we test this? You can see this little test icon, test it's like I don't know what is it called. So I can click on this test, and you don't need to put anything here, just click on this test. So this is a response. This is basically a response coming from our Lambda. That's mean our integration between API gateway and the Lambda is working. So if I show you the Lambda logs, the console log, if I go back to my other tab, which is Lambda, and if I go to my monitor tab and click on the view CloudWatch, it's open in the new tab. And let's give us a second. So here we go. So what you can see, this is currently we do not send any event, and we haven't sent any payload. That's why it's an empty payload. And what you can see, that's all. Basically, we do not log anything other than the event. Event is empty. So if I go back to my API gateway again, this is the get endpoint, right? So far it's good. We, as I mentioned, API gateway integrate with the our simple Lambda. So as I mentioned, the issue is, okay, let's go, this is endpoint. What you need to do if you want to access this endpoint, you need to deploy. So this is something called, if you click on the get and the action, what you can see, there's an API action called deploy. What is actual deploy? It's basically in the software development, you do have a few environment, like it could be dev, it could be test, and it could be production. So in this case, you can deploy this endpoint into one of the deployment environment. So let's create a deployment. We will deploy our endpoint, to, let's create a new stage. Let's say we are gonna deploy to our dev environment. You can give a description, that's fine, and click on deploy. When I click, it goes to, you can see that it's moved to the next tab. This is the resources tab where we create our endpoint, and this is the actual endpoint we can use to call from internet, through the internet. So as you can see, this is the invoke URL, the one that you can use to invoke our endpoint. So I copy that and go back to open a new tab, and if I paste it and enter, so as you can see, we get the response. If you get the raw response, this is how it's look like. If I, right, this is a little bit bigger. So as you can see, this is the actual response come from Lambda. It's working. Right, I'll go back to my API gateway again. Now what you can do, I can use this, I'm using Mac. I think you can use Postman. In this case, I'm gonna use my Insomnia, whichever client tool you can use. So in this case, I'm using Insomnia. Right, what I'm going to do, I'm paste that URL and click on sender. So as you can see, we get the hello response as expected. That's fine. I'm gonna delete this one. I don't need. Right, so basically this is endpoint, a user, and we get the response. That's perfect. Right, so let's go to again. So now is the time to secure our endpoint. What you have to do, you can see the third tab, which is called authorizer. Click on the authorizer. Let's create a new authorizer. What you can do, as I mentioned, we can there are two types of authorizer. One is a Lambda, the other one is a Cognito. In this case, what we're gonna do, we're gonna create a Lambda authorizer. My Lambda. Let's give it a name. And here, so as we are using the Lambda authorizer, you need to create a Lambda which is doing the authorizer work. So that's where you need to here, but currently we haven't done. So we will come to there and we will create a Lambda and come back to here and update the authorize tool. So then the token, this is again one of the header. You say if the user wants the API is secure, the user need to send some token to say, okay, I am the valid user. You can give it any name, but I give a let's say auth token. you can give it a name, but I put the header name as a auth token. So then I can create, but I can't create because I need to create a Lambda function, authorize a Lambda authorizer. So what I'm going to do, I'm gonna move to another Lambda, the other tab, go to function and create a new function called my Lambda authorizer. This is my Lambda function, which is try to do the authorization for me. Keep the Node.js as a runtime. I'm not gonna change the default execution role. I keep it as it is. It will create a role for me. Click on the create function. As it says, it takes a few seconds to create a Lambda with the necessary role. Give it a second and let's see what's going happening. Our Lambda authorizer up and running with the bare minimum code, but so we need to do some changes in the code itself, because we need to validate user. Based on the user, we need to send a response to respond back to API gateway. But one thing we need to important, the important thing, the API gateway expecting some valid format. So what the API gateway expecting something like this. Whenever the API gateway call the Lambda authorizer, it expecting a document something like this. If you are familiar with the policy, this is again, it's a kind of same policy, a kind of for the policy document. What says principal ID, you can put any name, doesn't matter. And under policy document, you have a version, and under a version we do have a statement. And the statement you mention, okay, this particular user has a permission or not on this section, and again in this resource. Action is execute API invoke, and the resource is the important thing. The resource URL should be something like this. As you can see, the ARN and AWS execute API. Until this, it's not going to change. It's same, but as you can see, this one your region. In my case, it's a southeast southeast 2, and this is account ID, account number, or this is a unique identifier of the staging environment, the one that we published the URL. I'll show you. For example, if I start with this is Z ending with the F9, which is if I go back to my gateway API, which is same. So this is the unique identifier. This weird string should be the next bit, and dev, which is a staging environment. It could be, in your case, it could be test, or it could be dev, product, prod, and this is the verbs, and this is a resource. I mentioned the resource format in a common way, what it should look like. Your AWS region, your account number, your API identifier, you can get from invoke URL, and the staging environment, verb, and resource. This is how it should be look like, the resource. And the effect is it says allow. If you want to allow for particular user, grant resources for a particular user, or you can say that deny, either one of them. But allow or deny based on your custom logic in your Lambda authorizer. So I'm going to my Lambda authorizer. What I'm going to do, I'm going to copy some code. So this is basically what I'm going, and go to the code. So let's go to the copy the code. Okay, what does have, right? Hopefully you can see better, right? So what it's have, we do have a handler, we log the event, and we get the token. So basically the token getting from the event. So as you can see, remember I put when I create the authorizer, I need to shoot the token. So that's the name of the token. So I copy for future reference. I need in the paste in when you create the authorizer in the other next system. So we grab the token, and then we define the permission as a default deny. If the token is something like my secret token, which is hard coded, and we allow the permission as allow, otherwise permission will be denied. And this is the auth response I am sent back to my API gateway. Resource is pretty much same for in relate to my resources and my endpoint, and I'm going to change the effect based on the token. It could be denied, it could be allow, then return the offspring. That's pretty simple, right? This is my custom Lambda authorizer. So in this bit, of course, you can change as you need to make it suitable for your business requirement. So I'm going to deploy my Lambda, my Lambda authorizer got created. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go to API gateway, go to authorizer, because I shift here and there, so I lose my authorizer. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new one. Give it a name. Let's say my authorizer, maybe Lambda, because this is a Lambda authorizer. Give it a Z, and here we do have a Lambda. What I'm going to do, I'm going to find my authorizer. It says my Lambda authorizer. This is the authorizer we created for our scenario. And Lambda invoke role, it's gonna create for you, so you don't need to worry about. Otherwise, if you do have a role already, you can put name. And here we say it's token. This is the auth token, the one that I mentioned. This token get passed to Lambda authorizer, the Lambda authorizer extract, and based on that, if I go back to my authorizer, this is something I mentioned. So my auth token or dash token need to be in the token source, and either otherwise you can put in the header or as a here, doesn't matter, right? Then you can put a token validation. I'm not going to do enable. So sometimes if you enable, because we are doing play around with your hands-on, this is a demo, you may get a different result, the false positive scenario, or to avoid, it's better to disable the enable one. But in actual production, once you test it, you don't need to. You better keep it as a enable. Then it's get the cache in the your authorization request. So I'm gonna click on the create. It asking, okay, because this authorizer, the API gateway need to talk to invoke new Lambda authorizer. It asking permission. I say grant. That's fine, right? So what they're gonna do? We got the authorizer. And what we can do, let's test this authorizer. When I click on the test authorizer, it's come with a token. Let's put a name, give it name, authorizer as a test. Okay, what we got, you see, we got the policy document as a denied. Yes, of course, this is something we in our custom logic. So as you can see, if the token is other than my secret token, it's gonna deny the permission. So if I come back, if I put my secret token, which is a valid one, if I click on that, you see still get the test token, still get let me refresh. Maybe you need to refresh. Test my secret token and click on test. Oh, still I'm getting the denied. Let me have a look what is wrong with my Lambda authorizer. Go back to my Lambda authorizer. Happen, I figure out in offline while I have offline, but the issue is let's go to API gateway again. We put my authorized token, and you see the auth token as this. When I click on test, we got the denied, right? Let's see why we get the denied. Even though we are saying that in the Lambda authorizer, we says we are expecting auth token, which is exact same. The header is this, and if it is my secret token, it should be allow, but in our case we get the denied. Let's see troubleshooting. So what I did, I open a monitor and click on the CloudWatch. If I click on the CloudWatch, what I can see, as we log the event, let's see what the events look like. If I click on this, I get more state. As you can see, the element name is authorization token. Even though we are passing as a auto hash token, but the lambda get as an authorization token. So that's why the lambda authorizer, if I go to the code, we are looking for different properties. What I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this auth token, come to lambda and paste here and deploy. Right, let's wait to deploy. Then go back to my API token and let's try again, test. Okay, here. So now we got allow. That's a good learning. Basically, what doesn't matter what the token you are sending over here, you can define any token name, but the lambda authorizer, when the API pass this request to lambda authorizer, it's come as like a authorization token, not the one that you put. So keep in mind when you change the when you give a name to authorization token. So it seems like it's tested. Now what we gonna do, but if till our resources is not, our API is not bind to this authorizer, we create authorizer, no connection between the authorizer and resources. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go to resource, click on the get and click on this method request. So it's open. Then you can change the authorizer to our authorizer. This is my authorizer lambda. This is the one that I created. Select that. Yeah, it's automatically okay. You need to click on this, otherwise it's not gonna save. Now it's saved, right? So it seems good. Now I am going to open my Insomnia, or you can use Postman if you like. What I'm going to do, I'm gonna call the endpoint. So if I copy, okay, so before that, so we did the changes in the resources, but we haven't deployed this change, right? So make sure whenever you do some changes, you need to deploy. Otherwise, in this staging environment, we won't get the latest update. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to deploy this new change to our existing dev environment. Deploy it. Yeah. The URL not going to change. If you see, it start with the Z and the F9. I'm go back to my Insomnia, and this is a request. What I'm going to do, I'm going to try without any sending token. Right. So it's directly straightly say it's not authorized because your request is not authorized because you are not sending any token. What I'm going to do, I'm going to add an auth token, because this is the token name it's expecting. Auth token, let's put something testing. Right, say now request, the message got changed. Earlier it's unauthorized, now it said user not authorized to access the this resource. Earlier it's a 401. Now we are sending the token. Now it says you don't have a access to permission, access to necessary access to a particular resource. So let's change into our name, which is, what is the name? If I go back, I'm getting the actual token. Let's say if I pass in copy and my request token. So let's this. Still my request token is not there. Let's have a look what's in the logs. Go back. I'm checking my logs. Go to authorizer. Give a refresh. Got the authorizer. I'm checking the logs. Let's have a look what is log says. Right, so we got the authorizer as expected. This is happening 13, yeah, 2021, 321, yeah, that's the time. Let's have a look why it's not getting. I'm calling again. I'm close all the, I'm delete the logs, then I can narrow down the issue. Yes, set is secret my token, that's good. Click on, it still say forbidden. Let's have a look what's the log says. As you can see, it's okay. We got the logs, and let's see the my secret token. It's fine. As you can see, we get the authorized token. If I go back to my authorized token, my Lambda authorizer, you get the authorized token. Let's have a look what the name is. It's exactly matches the token. Just copy, search and find. Yep, it seems like it's matching, but still we get the 403 issue. Let me troubleshoot. Right, I figured out what the issue. So issue was my identifier. So I put the wrong one, and it's missing some Z and P. So when I copy and paste, there was some issue. That's why it didn't went through properly. So after deploying, now it's fine. So if I go to here, if I change it to 3, which is wrong, yes, we get 403. If I pass the correct secret, you can access the hello from Lambda, the other Lambda. You can perfectly access the resource. How do I figure out? So basically what I did, I put some console logs over here, and you can figure out using the CloudWatch. That's the best way to, if you're trying out some issue, put some logging as far as you want. You can add more logs. And then I found, for example, if I see the token is, I want to make sure it's going inside. Yes, it went inside in the logs, as you can see. Yes, my recommendation is use the CloudWatch logs if you're running out with the issue, and you can troubleshoot easily. So that's how it's working, the Lambda Authorizer. So if I quickly run down what we did, we create a resource, and we create a deploy to staging environment, and then we create an authorizer. In this case, we create a Lambda authorizer. Then we attach this authorizer to our endpoint, which is a user get endpoint. How do we do that? Get to method request and set the authorizer. That's how we went through when we create a Lambda authorizer to secure your endpoint. In terms of function, we create two Lambda, the one that as a resource, one that as a authorizer. Yeah, this is simple. Hope you enjoy this video. And again, the next video, it's gonna be securing our endpoint, the same endpoint, using Cognito authorizer. You can find the link below in the description. So hope you enjoy this video, and again, if you like this content, please like and subscribe, and stay tuned, and see you on next video. Thank you. Bye.